Hi, this is Ben Baker and this is my creator session. Today we're going to delve into the high pressure situation of photographing the world's most powerful and connected people. How do you manage presidents in the Oval Office? How do you make split-second decisions that will determine the success of a magazine that month? How do you deal with personalities like Warren Buffett, the richest man in the world, and trade out a $2.85 root beer float for an extra 10 minutes? How do you manage Ron Howard and get him to stand still in the middle of a swarming sea of New Yorkers going on their commute for the day? How do you take chances? How do you succeed? How do you fail? And how do you get back up when you do make mistakes? And how do you build a journey and a path that you're proud of?
Happy New Year, friends. We're kicking off this new year with a creator session that is absolutely, without a doubt, one of my all-time favorites. This episode with photographer Ben Baker is filled with some of the best advice and lessons from one of the world's most successful photographers. For Ben, traveling with his father when he was young to remote communities ignited this deep interest in documenting the richness of humanity through photography, and after more than 3 decades, he is still pursuing the life of a creator. Ben is well known for photographing quite literally the most powerful people in the world, but he also photographs dogs with cones, janitors, single mothers, his mother, and really anything that inspires him. His goal, as encouraged by one of his mentors, always find the truth. He interned with Annie Leibovitz after finding his way to New York City and has been lucky enough to call other world-class photographers, namely Harry Benson and the Mary Ellen Mark, mentors. This is one of those sessions that you will want to save because you couldn't possibly digest all the goodness by only watching it once.
So my career path was a really interesting journey from Adelaide, Australia, where I was obsessed with printing in the darkroom at high school, to getting rejected for community college. I thought my life in photography was over at 17. But of course I got a job as a photo assistant in Australia in different cities. And then I had enough of working, so I decided to go backpacking in South America for a year. And then came off jungle time to New York, and I'm very, very lucky. I got a job working for Annie Leibovitz of Vanity Fair. And I got put through the school of hard knocks and traveling around America on very tough photo shoots and advertising campaigns. And I made the decision to start my own journey as a photographer. I was always taking pictures, but then to sort of say no to have assisting work. And it was quite challenging, but I built my way up and worked for magazine editors on small shoots and did my best to succeed at those. And then I got more shoots, bigger opportunities, bigger responsibilities. And then I sort of got known as photographing powerful people, mostly in the political and business fields. And then my career sort of took off, and I was on covers of magazines and advertising campaigns. Before I knew it, I had a studio and a team. And then, like every business, things go up and things come down, and I sort of downsized. And I'm now sort of on a path of working on a better balance of personal and commercial work. I have images in my mind that through my career really inspired me on my journey as a creative photographer. One of the images that always had inspired me was a portrait of a young Abraham Lincoln taken by Matthew Brady in New York, just down the street from where my studio was. And I was always inspired by that, and it also reminded me that it's now our turn, and it was my turn to photograph the then leaders of our country, to be able to inspire the next generation. So whilst we see images that are important in American history, we are here now, and it's our turn to create images that can inspire people down the line. One of my most cherished images, and it always is on my fridge wherever I live, is a postcard of Ansel Adams in the process of photographing school kids. And the headline is, "Even Ansel Adams needs a day job." And it's always reminding me to take great pride in commercial work that I do, because there's great honor in commercial work as well as our personal projects. We all search for our personal projects that give us the most creative joy, but when you do take on a commercial assignment for an advertising company or a school picture, that there's great pride in that, the pride of earning income to put food on the table, to help you along your journey as a creator. So take care of both sides of the work you do. When I think of images that I've taken that had the biggest impact on my career, obviously we all like to talk about our successes, but we also have failures. I was assigned as a very young photographer to go to the Toronto Film Festival and photograph A-list actors. I had to walk into rooms and direct the world's most famous actors, and I was pretty intimidated. I probably was a little young for the shoot. When I came back from Toronto, really sort of upset and scared and frightened that I had failed to direct these very powerful people and didn't have the confidence in my own skills. And I thought my career as a portrait photographer was over. I had a choice. Do I stop being a portrait photographer or do I find a way to succeed? And a friend of mine who's an actor suggested I study improv comedy. And I thought that was a silly idea at the start, but I gave it a try. I ended up finding that training gave me the ability and the confidence to take on powerful people, to deal with actors, and to be confident in your own skills, because the golden rule of improv is yes and, to be positive and to build on a problem. You can take a problem as a end of the road, or you can find as an opportunity to maybe turn left or turn right, or maybe change your perception. So when I went back to being a photographer after that training, I wasn't intimidated in rooms. I got to manage to direct world famous actors or President of the United States, and that training of staying positive and being open, because what might seem as a closed door might be a laneway or another open door for a journey to an unexpected place that might find happy moments and unexpected joys that you wouldn't have chosen if you went in with a very focused point of view. So let's look at a few images of mine that I can talk through the challenges and where I've succeeded to give the magazine the best image. In the win column is the one that I took the most risk on, that probably shouldn't have succeeded. There was a portrait I took of Ron Howard in Grand Central Station in New York. And Ron Howard's, obviously a very world famous, busy director who actually does take the train as a normal fella from Connecticut. He said he would give me 5 minutes, and I wanted to capture the energy of New Yorkers getting off trains in Central Station. As you know, New Yorkers don't wait for anybody. And as New Yorkers get off trains, they probably take about 15 seconds to disperse. So here I am in Grand Central Station with this gigantic long film lens at the time, so that people in the station didn't know we were there. And Ron basically gave me 2 trains, which basically gave me 15 and 15 seconds. So I got about 30 seconds and 2 attempts to get the perfect shot. And I had to get Ron frozen still. I had to get the crowd swarming around him. And I had to get it all in capture all in one frame. It all sounds great in theory. It's very, very hard to accomplish in real time. And I had to time it right that the exposure would blur the people and keep Ron frozen. I had a photo assistant who jumped into the train holding a light with a radio transceiver. The amount of things that should have and could have gone wrong in that portrait is astounding. The fact that we succeeded in that, I'm so grateful for. And I guess the greatest takeaway from me is that you have to learn to risk situations for great reward. We could have played the safe option and just had a portrait of Ron standing there with a train in the background. We could have taken so many other options, but we really chose to roll the dice. If you went in there again every other day, you might not succeed, but I'm really, really proud of that image because it showed that you do have to take chances, and that's where you'll find your biggest success. The images that probably had the most profound effect on my career were my early images of Barack Obama. Why they were so powerful is it opened up many, many doors and editors and clients who wouldn't have hired me before. So I knew that on that shoot I had to succeed, not only to make that shoot successful, but then to give further opportunities down the line. And I think the takeaway for creators in that is there are days in your career that are more important than others, and that's not to put too much pressure on yourself, but you must understand that there are certain shoots or projects that will have greater impact on your career, and you must focus on those because you know the consequences. One of the other images that I'm most proud of is Warren Buffett in Omaha. I was sent by Fortune magazine. One of the responsibilities as a magazine photographer is to shoot the cover. And that doesn't get given to most people because it has a set of challenges that you must be able to figure out on the fly with a very important person. Not only are you trying to take the best picture you can, you also have to keep in mind that you're part of a team, that the magazine has a layout and there's words going all over it, and it must capture this spontaneous image of a powerful person or a famous person that's unexpected, because we're also accustomed to seeing these very staid, controlled images. They probably expected a pretty traditional portrait in Warren's office and they would have been happy with that, but it's our job as creators to give a client more than that? Why did they ask you? Why did they ask me to go to Omaha, Nebraska? They could have asked so many people. So my job is to go in and find something unique and special. So instead of just focusing on him in the studio or him in the office, I was open to seeing what else could be there. What other magic could we find? And so we went to lunch in an Omaha diner, and I kept watching him drink his root beer floats. And I immediately thought, that's got to be the cover of the magazine, but how do I make it happen? So I got to get close to Warren and say, Warren, that's got to be the cover of the magazine. It's the greatest idea I can think of. And he turned around and said, sure, Ben, as long as you're paying for the $2.85 root beer float. But the magic of that image is that it showed a slice of life. But I also had to make sure that in shooting what was a very spontaneous picture, that I was keeping in my mind the layout, the type, the format of the magazine, the eye contact to camera. All these things that come on board when you're shooting a cover of a magazine that don't have to be thought of when you're contributing on the inside of a magazine. I almost talk about it having multiple brains. I've got one brain talking to Warren as a human being. I got one brain thinking about the environment and making sure I'm managing it. And then the other brain is thinking about what's required of me from my client. Do you give me enough space to the left? Can I have space here? Is Warren looking at the camera? And all at the same time, I've also got to make sure all the technical part of my process is working. Did I make the right choice with the lens? Did I make the right choice with the exposure? Is my light correct? So that's the art and that's the skill, I guess, of experience, that eventually you can take all those challenges and juggling everything and you can find it into one frame. I talk to filmmakers and I always think in many ways they have it a little easier than photographers because we've got to distill everything into one frame. It doesn't speak, it doesn't move, you can't press play. Everything in a still photograph has to be told in one silent frame. And that's the art and the craft of finding a great image. One of the other images that we can look at and sort of break down was a portrait of President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama in the map room of the White House. And we succeeded in finding a really quiet moment with a couple who were been together for 20 years and still very much in love. But what you don't know is what's happening around this image. I was given a situation where I didn't control the location, the room, the weather, the light. 10 minutes before this picture was taken, I was meant to be in the Rose Garden. Then a storm came in. And then I was told I couldn't use this room and I couldn't have this furniture and all these things that were told to me that I couldn't have. So I had to find a way to take away all these distractions and all these disadvantages or situations I didn't control and stay focused on them as people, stay focused on them as a story, and succeed where there were so many reasons why it shouldn't have. So that's, again, the ability to slow down and focus on one piece at a time. I'd always sing these songs to my assistant that the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone, that's connected to the... You must break down a challenging process. If I thought about the challenges on that shoot, if I thought about the storm outside, if I thought about the handler who's telling me to hurry up, if I thought about the light that might not be working, if I thought about all these different things that were happening at the time, if I thought about all that at once, you can't succeed. So my advice to creators is when you're coming into a very challenging environment, just break it down. It's very easy. Most things are very, very easy when you just isolate one thing. Obviously, you've got to move on very quickly. Is the light right? Yes. Is the angle right? Is the camera focused? Have I spoken to them as human beings? But then at some point, you've got to step away and just let the magic happen. And we managed to succeed. You don't see the storm outside. You don't see the room of handlers. You don't see the clock ticking. You don't see the possibilities of all the equipment that might fail. But I had to maintain a positive, focused outlook. I had to almost pretend that if something goes wrong, it'll go wrong, but you got to keep smiling and the show's got to go on. When I'm photographing very powerful or famous people, I've just got to remember that they're just as human as you and I don't put them on a pedestal of who they are. I give them great respect to their job, but I will treat anyone in any photograph the same way at the same time. One of my heroes is Irving Penn, but it wasn't his images that affected me as much as the stories about him. There's these legendary stories of Irving Penn receiving thank you notes from famous people, grateful of how he treated them as a photographer and as a creator. And I take great pride in that in my work when I go into an environment, how I manage and to treat other people, because it not only gives me joy, but also affects the ability for me to go on in my career and be welcomed back into these very powerful rooms. I have this picture of the janitor who I photographed before I photographed Barack Obama in a shoot. and those pictures look the same because I gave both subjects the same level of respect and dignity. So therefore what happens is if you treat everyone with the same level of care and respect, when someone comes in who might be higher up the order of our society, I don't give them any more, so therefore why should I change who I am to them? So it helps me bring it back to being just Ben taking a photograph of Warren, or Ben taking a photo of Barack, having a chat about life. I even engage them in conversation that is a great leveler. I don't ask a president about choices he made as a president. I might talk about hot dogs, or I might talk about root beer floats, or I might talk about sport, or what things we find in life that are funny. But also what I hope to do by having an honest connection about things we can all connect on is that the image will show that. At the end of the day, my portrait of this person, that when people see that image, they feel that conversation, that they realize they must have just had a conversation about the football team winning. And it will be a more honest, human, connected portrait that when people pick up a magazine, they say, I think I know that person just a little bit more. So I think to engage people in a very human, connected way will help you deal with high pressure situations, to bring it back to a normal level of experience that we're all accustomed to. I'm at a stage in my career where I'm really thinking about the personal projects that I do and how I balance those with my corporate and commercial work. It's interesting, when I started off as a photographer, there were very clear roadmaps, and there were guidelines, and there were sort of rails you could hold on to, sort of in a way, on the sides. And the way the media and the internet and the world has changed, that all those roadmaps and those paths forward have changed dramatically. So it's really interesting as a photographer to have seen the industry be so structured, and now it's wide open. I think right now we're living in the most extraordinary times, that we have the most incredible opportunities as creators, but it's also maybe the most confusing and daunting because there isn't a roadmap, there isn't a path forward. When I started out as a photographer, I had a set of pictures, I had a powerful agent took it to 4 magazines, they made a decision. Now people can succeed from coming at their creative careers in many different ways, different platforms, obviously with the internet that's changed the universe, so you can have a voice. And you have to choose wisely about what paths you take. There's a chance now that, you know, a person sitting in a school in Bangladesh, if they're doing incredible work, could get noticed by an editor in New York City. There's a great story of a young female photographer in Brazil who's taking the most beautiful pictures on Instagram. And next minute, the New York Times editor hired her to take these pictures of the most powerful women of the world. It's really important in your career to realize that you've got to keep evolving. And if you don't keep evolving, you'll actually find that your industry or your world around you will make you do it. I had points in my career that I got comfortable and I thought this is the kind of work I'll always keep doing. And then it stopped and I got pretty upset. I became very successful at photographing the most powerful people in the business world. And then that work changed and I didn't know what to do. And I then moved on to telling personal stories about women in New York and their lives. And I was terrified working on these new shoots. But it opened up new doors, new opportunities that I'm very grateful that the industry stopped giving me the work that I was comfortable doing and forced me to look afield. I'm going through one of those stages now where I've moved countries. The work I did in America Australia doesn't really have American presidents, so I have to change. I'm really excited to work on these new projects. And there's ways that I'm going to succeed and there's ways I'm going to fail. But you know, there's a really great way of realizing that, you know, that stumble might open your eyes to new avenues and new doors and new experiences. So it's really important that you keep evolving in your career, to keep growing, to be inspired. Never sit still, never stop. Take a moment, enjoy the times, say good on you, but keep moving. Even though it seemed daunting and challenging that there isn't a roadmap, just keep reminding yourself, if you keep doing great work, keep the work personal, keep it profoundly, deeply personal. If you keep doing the right work for the right reasons, and you stick at it, it will turn. One project I'm working on right now is my understanding of Australia. I'm a young Australian. I spent 20 years of my life in New York, and I'm not sure if I know what Australia is or who Australians are. So this project is an interview and photographic series, trying to understand, ask the powerful question, who are we? So we're here photographing Vittorio, who's an Australian man who was an immigrant from Italy in 1960, and he spent his life here ever since, living in Adelaide, Australia. I'm passionate about this project because I spent my life telling stories about Americans in America, and I had a very thin understanding of who we are. And hearing myself talk about Australia in rooms around America, I could hear this cardboard version, or very sort of the veneer of the Australian, the version that Hollywood likes to sell, or we like to sell to ourselves. I even once was talking to a very wealthy American, and I came in and almost did a little dance and a little performance about Australians and who we are. And she made a joke, called me out on it, and said, I think you're just pulling out the old examples. I'm not sure if that's really your opinion. And I couldn't answer that. And she was right, that I was really just using what I perceived as Australians and who we are as my version of it to Americans, because I'm proud of Australia, being an Australian. But I couldn't really understand the depths of it. I guess you get to a point in your career where you spend a lot of time devoted to projects and to work. And then you start thinking about, what am I going to leave behind? What's the point of the project? What's its worth? And I think there can be no other statement of worth than leaving behind a document that might explain who we are now, almost a bit of a time capsule, and to explain to others the same stories. The advice I'd give to creators is that it is all possible. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter the background you're in. It depends on how much you want something and how much you're prepared to give for that success. When I think of my heroes, none of those people came from backgrounds of great wealth or prestige. They weren't given a path forward to being great photographers. They came from small towns. They came from poorer families. They came from countries that no one would expect them to move to New York. One of the images that's always had an effect on me and has always inspired me to go on is one of my mentors, Harry Benson's images as he's getting off the plane with the Beatles at JFK. What that means to me and what that shows to me is Harry came from a relatively modest background in Scotland to go on to have this incredible life, photographing the rich and famous, the most powerful, traveled the world. And in my own way, I've journeyed through most incredible places on the planet. I've been given experiences that no one can buy. And that only was given to me because I had a camera and I took on the world as a creator. So what a joy that through the art of creating, we get to have these life experiences that are untouchable in any other fields. But be ready that there may be a high price, that you may have to work incredibly hard for many, many years before that success turns. But it will turn. It will come around for you if you keep fighting and you keep asking the right questions and putting great work out in the world. So it is very, very possible. You can do it from anywhere, but you've got to be prepared to sacrifice. And that's the choice you need to make. How much are you prepared to put in to get that back in your creative pursuits?
I feel pretty strongly there is nothing I can say to elevate Ben's wisdom from this episode. After all, it's my job to find the most inspirational creators and hope that their lessons can have an impact on you and your career. And I think we did that with this one. But there is one thing I can add. Ben is right when he says there is no better time to be a creator, and that being a creator can offer you life experiences doing deeply personal work that you love and unlike anything else. I share that to remind you to chase your dreams and to always take your creative pursuits seriously. As always, I'm Haley. Thank you for joining me on Creator Sessions. Make sure to leave a comment on what resonated with you most. And most importantly, go follow Ben and his creative journey.
The best advice that was given to me by one of my mentors, Harry Benson, who was an iconic photographer, photographed everyone of the last 50 years. And Harry would always say to me, even while we're joking around, to maintain a very serious focus on our jobs. We all have fun careers. We sing or dance or take photographs or make films, but you must always maintain a very serious focus on your work. Other advice given to me, one of my other heroes was Mary Ellen Mark, that always said the most important question that you must ask yourself while you're creating is to find the truth. And I always was puzzled by that advice. I thought it was quite cryptic. But if you ask yourself on a daily basis, is this the most truthful picture I could be taking today? Have I asked myself truthful questions? Have I asked that of people around me? And it doesn't have to be in a negative way. It's a very serious question, but I think if you maintain that central question of finding the truth in everything you do, you'll succeed more than you'll fail. And another piece of advice given to me was Chris Doherty, who was a photo director at New York Magazine. And I was a young photographer. I started working for him, and I came to a pre-production meeting, and I showed him all these different ways I could photograph this project. And they were sort of references to other people's careers or work. And Chris said, why are you showing me this? I want you to show me how you photograph people, because I hired you for you. And I've never forgotten that line, because it reminds me every day that you need to find your own path. You can be inspired by other people. You can emulate other people's careers, but you must find your own way forward. And that's to have pride and sort of strengthen your own creative choices, that every little choice you make leads up to the output that is you, and it's your story. So own it and go forward with that.